And welcome to TechNow, the web series that takes a deeper dive. We explore all things on the Now platform across a wide variety of topics for builders, admins, and developers. Craig's going to laugh because I almost got our two intros mixed up. I almost do that every time.
I was like, why does that sound familiar? Wait a minute.
Yeah, let's get on with this. Hey, my name is Chuck Tomasi from ServiceNow. I've been here for about 10 years. I was a customer for a couple before that. I'm going to do a real quick introduction because I want to get you into Craig's content here. But I look forward to seeing a lot of you at a certain upcoming conference that we'll talk about real shortly, because that's where I got really my start in the ServiceNow ecosystem, was at a certain conference we'll be talking about. So I look forward to seeing you soon. Over to Kreg.
All right. And I'm a 6-year veteran here at ServiceNow, and I won't waste too much of your time. You can see all my pertinent information there on the screen and my beautiful mug. So there we go. And you can search Chuck and I out for this at the certain conference he's about to tell you about right now. Sort of.
Yeah, our agenda today is we're going to do a real quick. We did our introductions, but we've got some introductory topics that we want to talk about real quick to get you familiar with, some of the things about ServiceNow you may not. If you've watched this series before, well, then these will be old hat and you can go get a coffee for a couple of minutes and come on back. Our main topic today that Kreg is going to be covering is Studio. We call it 101 to kind of give you that university feel. This is an introduction to our IDE, our integrated development environment, that we'll dive in a little deeper, maybe show you something you didn't know. If you've been using Studio for a while, there were a couple things when Kreg and I were exploring this topic that I either learned and forgot or just didn't know and went, that's really cool. We need to share that. So stick with us. There may be something new for you, even if you're an experienced person and you've been using Studio for a while. If you're not, this is a great introductory to how you can get started on that. So with that, and we will be trying to answer as many possible questions Q&A live. I'll be doing that while Kreg is presenting. But if we don't get to your questions live and on the air, we will answer them after the fact and post them back to the community with this video. So that certain conference we were talking about is called Knowledge. It is Knowledge 2020 this year, held in Orlando, Florida, May 3rd through 7th. So we look forward to seeing you there. I believe this is being recorded on February 18th. You have until February 21st, if you're watching this live or right after, you can get that early bird pricing until February 21st. It's been extended from 14th to the 21st. So save a couple $100, get there. It is a lot of hands-on learning. It is a lot of networking opportunity. There's a lot of interacting with the product engineers and product managers. So if you've got some insights, I'll tell you, last year we had a great conversation about CI/CD, and it's been put in the product, and we'll be presenting on that in March. So look for TechNow in March, all around the Now platform CI/CD stuff. So it can happen that your discussions in Knowledge actually turn into a product or feature that will be put in the platform. And if we're lucky enough, we'll be able to talk about it here. So Go. Knowledge is a lot of fun. Don't forget, there's also pre-conference training if you want to get up on the latest, whether it's application development or scripting or GRC or whatever. Our wonderful, wonderful training department and the super duper trainers that are both in ServiceNow and our partners will be delivering a lot of that. So that's happening. What is it? Sunday, Monday, Kreg, is the pre-con training?
Yes, it starts on Sunday and Monday. You're right. And then Knowledge itself starts on that Tuesday.
Kreg knows because he has to provision all those instances for Knowledge all week, including the pre-con training.
I better know.
Don't get caught flat-footed.
Yeah.
We have the Customer Success Center, which is your resource center for wherever you are on your journey for ServiceNow, whether you are just starting out and saying, how am I going to implement this CMDB thing? Or what is ITSM all about? Or what are the best practices for X, Y, or Z? You can go there. If you have been doing this for years and years, there's great information on best practices for upgrades or technical best practices so you can facilitate upgrades. Just lots of great information there. Quick questionnaire, and it will give you prescriptive information about what you need to do and how you should do it from customers, from ServiceNow. This is what our customers have been asking us for years. Say, you guys have done hundreds, thousands of implementations. What should we be doing as a customer to make sure that things go smoothly? And this is your resource to find that. ServiceNow.com/success. We also have the developer portal. So I mentioned this webinar is for developers of all skill levels, whether you are a full stack developer from another platform, you've got a little bit of experience with ServiceNow, you're a system administrator, or you're a process owner and you're just getting into some of the no-code capabilities that we've done on previous shows. Developer.servicenow.com is your resource for that. You can get a free personal developer instance on any of the latest 3 releases. As of this recording, that would be Orlando, which is our latest release of Q1 2020. We've got the previous release, New York, which came out in the fall of 2019, and Madrid. So you can test what you've either got in production today and say, hey, would this work? How does this work? Let's build a sandbox free from your development stack. If it doesn't work, you wipe it out and you start over. It's that easy. Personal developer.
No harm, no foul, right?
Right. All of the scripting APIs, online learning plans, so you can go through and get lessons for free, videos, share content, a lot of great stuff. Go over there, check it out, get involved with the developer community. There's meetups. There's live meetups. I was in one in Calgary last week, in Calgary, Alberta. So it happens. I think there's one coming up in Phoenix where I'll be. So occasionally you'll get me or Dave Slusher or whatever. So I'm going to stop now, go into the background, try to answer your questions live and surface them to Kreg, and turn it over to Kreg for Studio 101. Take us through the course.
Okay. I think that was the biggest or quickest whirlwind we've had from the start of the show to where we're starting to talk about the content.
Go.
But
get to the stuff.
Go. Here we go. Well, I was going to waste some more time, but oh well. So before you start, all right, remember that you don't necessarily have to develop applications for ServiceNow with code. You can, of course. I like to get my hands dirty. I know Chuck does too. But, we want to let you know that there are some resources out there, including the No Code Apps for Dummies book, which seems like I know one of the authors. Oh, yeah, it's Chuck. So there you go. There's the book right there.
Oh, we're going to have more copies of that at Knowledge, too, if you want to stop by.
Yeah. So before you start, there's lots of things that you want to take into consideration. Some of the, you want to do some planning. You want to think your application through and know kind of where you're going from start to end. Who's going to be using it? What's your audience? What kind of interface you're going to use for it? Is it going to talk to external systems? All that kind of stuff. You want to kind of plan that as best you can. Now, I know sometimes you come up with ideas as you're building it, and of course you can kind of change gears a little bit. And that's the whole thing about Studio that we're going to show today. It allows you to easily make those course corrections or changes that you need. And of course, your data. So where's your data going to come from? Is it going to, like I said, come from external systems, a process like incidents and that kind of thing where you're having tickets and other information from users? And then what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with your data once you have it? Are you going to do reports? So you can do all that in Studio as well. And of course, you want to also think about how others are going to interact with it, as I mentioned a moment ago, and the way your application will work, and of course, the workflow that goes along the whole thing. Because if you have a wonky workflow, nobody's going to use it, or at least feel enthused to be using it. So anyway, we're going to have some links in the show notes and the resources for this particular episode that points to some more documentation as well as the book, so you can go get started and start that planning process. So getting started. All right. So how do you get started with Studio? Well, it's easy as typing in Studio in the navigation bar in ServiceNow. Right there in the Studio, when you open it up, you can start creating an application from scratch, or you can do the import from source control, which I'll show you that here in just a little bit, which is great, especially when you want to store that application outside of your production instance and have other systems be able to pull it, or other developers too. So how do you start building? Well, as soon as you open up the Studio, right there, right below the file menu across the top is Create Application File. And when we say Create Application File, we're talking about the pieces that make up your application. It can be from a table to a form or some. I know it sounds a little funny when you say Create Application File, but in my mind, I was like, that doesn't sound quite right. But it does, as you're making files that make up your application. Script includes tables, all that kind of stuff. And you'll see the little nav explorer off to the left of all the application files, or the application explorer is what it's actually called, that has all your pieces that make up your application.
That one threw me off at first too, as I wasn't sure if you should call it an application file, an object, an artifact, a record. What is a business rule? Well, in Studio, just call it a file, because traditional developers will think about it. If they're looking at a list of things they're developing on the left-hand side, each one of those is basically a file. So
and it did throw me off too. And if you look under the file menu, which I'll show you in a minute, they call it something slightly different, but they're really the same thing. So let me share my screen, and we'll get into the demo. All right. So how do you get into Studio? All right. So it's easy as typing Studio, right in the navigation bar, and there it is. When we open it up, you will see that I'm shown a list. This is a little greeter screen. It's application picker that has a list of applications already on this system. And I'm going to show you the fitness app, which I wrote a little bit ago. But as you can see, there's a few in there already, other apps. So from the greeting, from this application window, there's a create application, which you can create one from start, or you can import from source control, as we talked about a minute ago, going from a Git repository and bringing an application down to your instance. So I'm going to walk through creating an application, and I'm not going to go through the entire process. Back in October, and I'm trying to remember the episode number. I'm sorry, I don't have it on my notes. The episode where
9, I think, 68, somewhere in there.
68. Yeah, we did a whole episode on the guided application creator. So I invite you to go back and check that. But I'm just going to step through it real quick. So we're going to make some app, and if you look down here at the bottom, I see this is where. So there you go. I'll shrink it for a minute. When I type in some app, it creates the scope automatically. Now you can change this, but
what's a scope, Kreg?
What's a scope? All right. So think of ServiceNow. There's a big global scope, and inside that, you want your application to be encapsulated by itself. So you know that these tables and everything belong to this particular application. So there's a scope. If you think of maybe. I'm trying to think of the analogy, like tunnel vision. Okay, these are the things you're going to focus on. That's inside your scope. That's what this is. This is the base naming convention for all of your scripts and everything else. So you know that these belong together.
I'm sorry, I got you off that question.
Anyway, all right. So that's what a scope is. It's basically your focus for your application. You can give it a description. And, if you want to add a logo or something like that, maybe you're going to publish this in the ServiceNow store at some point, you can drop a logo in there. And so it's easy to identify and, kind of make your application stand out. So now I want to show you that we can do roles. We can actually pick an existing role if you want. Maybe you want admin. I don't think so, but maybe application activity creator. There's other ones. There's a million roles in here, or you can create your own. And just for the sake of argument, I'm just going to select admin, but you can create your own role. Now, I do want to point out right here at the bottom, you can continue in the Studio without going any further in the guided app creator. So if you want to
scope created, you're pretty much done at this point. And I did that quite literally. I did that 12 times this morning. Because 12? I was working on, yes, I made 12 new scopes.
Wow, there you go. Okay, so anyway, that's yeah. So it's great just to get started, and then you can drop into Studio and just dive right in and start building. So I do want to continue here because there's something else I want to show you. Now you have different you have different development interfaces that you can have for your own application, of course, mobile and classic. But one of the things I do want to point out here is the workspace. This is the only place you can create your own workspace is through the guided app creator. Is that right, Chuck?
That is correct as of New York and Orlando.
Yeah, for later on, I'm sure those options will change. But right now, if you want to do a workspace application, you got to do it here. So I'm just going to choose mobile and classic though, and continue on. and show you that you can choose a table if there's an existing table in the system that you want to use for your application, or you can create your own. And to create your own, you have some options here to upload a spreadsheet, extend a table, or create a table from scratch. I'm not going to do any of that because I do have an application set up. And again, I'll refer you back to our October episode where we talked about the guided app creator and how that can help you out. So let me close this out. And I'm going to open this.
Like you said, the one thing I like about that is you can pick and choose as much of the guided app creators you want to use. If you just want to go and create a scope, create the scope, and you say continue with Studio. If you want to do the roles and tables and interfaces and all this stuff, it is a super easy way to jumpstart your mobile experience too. We did a workshop last week and had 7 teams. All 7 of them chose to do mobile because we were going through guided application creator, and they just checked the box and they all got up and did a demonstration and said, now let me show you how it looks on mobile. I was stunned because the barrier to entry is so low on mobile. You can accelerate mobile experience release.
Yeah, and of course, everybody's mobile devices have gotten so good nowadays. It makes sense to actually have an easy way to make a mobile interface just to go ahead and jumpstart that process.
Okay, speaking of jumping, you jumped out of Studio. What are you doing here?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to show you the application briefly. I'm going to show you the application that I created in Studio. Now, again, the focus is not on actually the application I built, but it's more about Studio than anything. But I just wanted to show you. So I had some tables and a couple of reports. But here I wrote a fitness exercise. I've been weightlifting a little bit, and I have a table that holds all of the different exercises that I do, and I have a table that does the sessions. And under sessions, I can create a new one, or when I create a new one, I have some scripts in the background that take the weightlifting exercises and populate my session and add them to it. And of course, I can track all the weight and everything like that. So, showing you that, we're in Studio. I've got the application open, and we're going to take a tour around Studio and circle back around. You can see some of the scripts and stuff I've got. So, one of the first thing I want to show you, and it's easy to overlook, and I know I did as soon as I started to use Studio, was right here, the keyboard shortcuts. And we're going to get back to some of these functions, but I wanted to point this out, that right there in your face is some keyboard shortcuts that will come in handy for using Studio. Go into code, doing a code search, creating a new application file, and of course, closing tabs. What's that?
I am a keyboard junkie, but for some reason, I always forget those.
Yeah. Oh, I find using the keyboard is much more efficient than reaching over, grabbing the mouse or your trackpad. And, so yes, I do the same thing. And of course, I forget these as well, but they're right there so you can remember them. So let's take a look at the top. We have your file edit. Well, not really file edit, but your file menu across the top. Under file, this is what I was talking about a minute ago, where it says create file. This is actually broken out here because it is also one of the more common things that you're going to do with Studio. Here and of course the code search.
What is that? That's 3 ways to do it. You could do file, create file. You can create application file from that top bar, or you could do the hotkey.
That's right.
Okay.
I just wanted to point that out, but that is broken out, and that's the same thing. So it's create file. You can import from source control. You can create an application right from here, and it would walk you through the guided app creator once again. You can publish your application to an app repo, so maybe you can push an app to another instance of yours, or you can publish this to the store if you're so inclined. And then you have settings for this app. You can switch apps. I can pull this up and you can see I've got other apps. Like I mentioned, there's my Sum app. It's such an awesome app. You can select it and change it, but we're not going to do that. And of course, you can manage developers, where if other people are on this system and you want them to have access to this app so they can make their own changes and help you out working on some code, you can do that. Now moving over to source control, this is where this becomes a little more existential. Is that the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Kind of gets your application out there a little bit more. Maybe some other people can work on your app that are not necessarily.
The biggest thing about source control for me is version management.
Version management. That was where I was going with this. So,
I can create branches and tags and be able to say, hey, I've got, say, version 5 of my application in production, but development is working on version 6. I'm not ready to deploy it yet, but I can park those changes into source control, roll back to version 5, match dev to exactly what production is doing, see their problem, fix their problem, that kind of thing, and be able to flip-flop between those different versions using source control.
Absolutely. And when we say link to source control, it can be a server in your enterprise with of course, you need the right address for it to be able to talk to it. But no, I take that back. No, I take that back. I take that back. Wait a minute. Wait. I take that back. You can't do that because because ServiceNow is outside of your enterprise. But when I'm like GitHub, GitLabs, Bitbucket, there's a bunch of them out there. They'll give you a public URL that you can. I'm sorry, my bad. Shouldn't have brought that up in your enterprise. But
on premise, we've heard the request. I think I mentioned this with in the December episode with Jeremy on how to move things around. On premise, GitHub has been requested ever since I think GitHub came out, as well as a number of other features. We've heard you. It's coming. Okay, just hold still. It's coming.
Yeah. So anyway, so right now I would recommend using a public one like GitHub, GitLab. And all of those will let you do private repos for free. I know GitHub just recently changed that, I think after Microsoft took over, and there's GitLabs and Bitbucket. So you don't have to necessarily make your application public when you put it out there. Anyway, so as Chuck mentioned, you can see the create a branch, you can switch branches, you can create a tag, all the Git functions, and more are to come. But just keep an eye on that. But there's plenty to get you going right here. And of course, the window has the options that you would normally expect: close current tab, close all tabs, close other tabs, close unmodified tabs. I think that's also helpful. So when you open stuff up and just trying to use it for reference, you can just close all the unmodified stuff and it'll just go away and clean up your interface. In search, you'll see the two options, go to and code search, are also broken out because those are two functions that you should be using often, not necessarily needing to go dig through a menu, but they are also here and represented by keyboard shortcuts. So let's go take a look at, let's do a go to. All right. So I'm gonna start showing you this a little bit. So we're gonna go to, I have a UI action or script include called constant. So let me back up. Script include, and you can see there it is, script include, and it'll tell you, if I did UI, you would probably see UI script in there, but I can click it and open it up, and we're starting to break out some of these tabs. You'll see the more and more tabs. I don't know why I didn't say that 3 times, but you'll see more tabs pop up as we go along. But there's one for your constant, and you can see my script include. Now the code search is interesting too. You see my script here, and it has the word constant in it. So let's go search. Now, the code search, you can search from a term. You can narrow down your search to what type of thing you're looking for. Or you can search in all applications that are also in the system, which is handy if you have maybe you're sharing a table between another application or some scripts, or you need to do a little research. You can click that and broaden your scope for your search. So I'm going to put constant. We'll do search. And you'll see it also gives me another tab. This is where we start getting that, the tab clutter where you can open. It's just like Chrome. You have Chrome. I've seen people with hundreds of tabs. And so you want to kind of manage that. But anyway, so we get a search tab, and you can see there's constant. And it breaks this down by how many times it found it. So it's in a business rule, it's in a new action. And you can click one of these headers to actually open it up and pull it right in. So there's another tab.
And I like the tabs here for a couple other reasons. One is, if you do this through the standard browser, yes, you could go to system definition tables and open up a table tab, and you could go to system definition UI actions and open up the UI action tab. But it gets a little confused on the context of where your session is, and when you hit the back button, you could be going to the wrong place. This allows you to keep it all open at the same time concurrently. And now, for example, if you're writing a Glide Ajax script and you need to know what the script include pieces and the client script pieces and the table, you can have all that open and just be copying and pasting values and variables from one to the other. Much, much faster, much, much easier than trying to do this through the standard browser interface.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah, navigation does get a little sketchy when you have several tabs open, or Chrome tabs, I should say, of the same app. But yeah, this is perfect for that kind of use case. So let's start taking a look at the Application Explorer, which you can see right here on the side here. The first thing I'll point out to you is two important things, I think, is because sometimes, and now I've got my browser kind of embiggened, so you can see it a little bit better in this demonstration. But say I need a little more real estate, right there, that little triangle button, you can click it and it gives you that extra real estate you may need to actually do some work. Maybe you're on a laptop. That's another good one. The screen's kind of minimized. You need some real estate. So there is the maximize and minimize pane. The other thing, which I think is extremely helpful, is, you can look at this list of the Application Explorer, and there's stuff everywhere. There's script includes, there's tables, all that stuff. What we want to do is we want to collapse that all down so we can drill down easily and find what we need. So we will click that, and you can see it breaks everything down. You know how collapse works. So we can drill down and go, oh, there's a table I'm on, and we'll open that up. There's another tab. Let's see. So going down the side, you can see all the different application files that I have for this app. There's some reports, navigation. Let's see, UI actions. I think I already had that one open. Let's see, server development, UI actions. There's the other tab. All right, so now we kind of understand how this all comes together as far as navigating your application. One of the things I can't really demonstrate here too much, but I wanted to talk about, and Chuck and I demoed this, is I had put a comment in one of my scripts. Now, Studio will save your changes as you're working to a point. It won't save them as being something you committed. But what I'm talking about is, like, say the power goes out and your browser dies, it can save your changes and have it sitting there ready for when you come back, which is kind of nice. We demoed this, and I was very surprised to see stuff came back. Let me back up. Not surprised, but I was very happy that it was able to come back, because there's been plenty of times I've been typing away. Mm-hmm. And something happens and the browser dies, or maybe Chrome
crashes entirely. I had one last night. I was working on a big old script, and the machine had a hard crash. It was. I haven't seen this in a long time, because operating systems and applications are getting better at playing together. And it went down. I went back into Studio. And there's my changes. It gave me a warning. It said, "Hey, this is a backup version. Do you want to use this, or do you want to use what was last saved?" And I went, "Oh, thank you.
Yeah. You'll be thanking the computer gods. Please, thank you. All right. So now that we've looked at Studio, and you kind of see how this little rodeo works. Now let's expand this out a little bit further and push our application into a repository. So what we're going to do is we're going to link
up, man. What do we need to do to do source control?
All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on source control and then link to source control. You see there's three options. There's four things here, but the three required fields, there's the URL, the username, and the password. So let me copy my link here. So I want to go, where do you find this link at? Right? That's the big thing. Let's go here. Here we go. So I went into GitHub, and normally you would see a list of applications that maybe you've been working on, or maybe not. So if you don't have one for this app, you want to make a blank repository. So you can just create new and type in the name, which is what I did here. So if I go to Fitness app, which is the one I'm going to use, there's no files here yet.
Can you make that font a little bigger? I'm seeing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. It didn't enlarge this one. Here, can you see that?
That's better.
Okay. So when I went into the Fitness app, again, it's an empty repository. Right there is the address for this repo. So I will copy that link.
There's a little button right there for copying to the clipboard.
There. Yes.
I had to give him crap about that every time.
You keep pointing that out. Yeah. So anyway, you copy that.
Don't hit it.
I know.
Hey,
and
after 15 years of giving me crap for all the inefficiencies, because you certainly have a number of them that I can make use of, I have to get my jabs in where I can.
Oh, yeah. Believe me, my wife points plenty of them out. So, so we put the address in. I will put my username in and the password, which I will not share with you guys. And when we hit link, you can put a commit message in there. Here you go.
Yeah, now, before you, hold on. Somebody did ask in the Q&A, can you make that commit message mandatory? And as far as I know, that's not a configurable option, but I will be checking, and I'll post it back to the community when I get that answer to find out if that's something we can do. Theoretically, it's a dictionary entry somewhere, but if it's on a custom modal or something, it might be a little tricky. So we'll find that out for you.
Okay. So right now it's not required, but yes, that's probably a good point. So I'll type in first post as my commit message. Here's my username, password, and of course my get URL. We'll do link to source control, and you'll see it's doing its thing, and voila, there's not much to my app, but there it is. Now I also want to point out, now that we're linked to source control, follow my mouse right down here into the corner, you can see that we're connected. I should have shown this before, but the little connectors are separated when you're not linked to source control. And you can see we have some options here highlighted. Now that we're linked, you can edit the repository configuration, apply remote changes if there are any, create a branch, tag, and you can view the history. And now that we're tracking those changes, view history is, I think, super useful to go, what did I change to break, my script? So there you go. Did you have something else you wanted to add?
No, not at this point. I mean, a lot of this is I'll admit, this is a fairly simple implementation of source control. You can create tags, you can create branches, you can switch branches. It is a destructive change, though. So if you are working on something in your dev instance, for example, on version 5.3.1, and you want to switch branches back to 5.3, it's going to literally uninstall that whole application, go out to source control, and bring it back in, because you may have elements in the newer release that aren't in the older one. And you can't just leave a table or a property lying around. That could impact the way that the older version behaves. So it's got to do it that way. Going forward, again, we've heard your requests. We want to be able to do this better. We want to have multiple people working on this, et cetera, et cetera. Watch for more information coming out soon on improvements we've made about source control in Studio.
Oh yeah, it's only going to get better over time, I'm sure. Now, I do want to stress one point here. Now that your app is in here, and let me refresh this. Dismiss. You can see, we have information in here now. It's not just the empty repository.
And go down to that README file. There's something very important in there.
Yes, that's where I was going with this. So you can see the application. You can
zoom way in on this one, Kreg.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the file, so that's great. But don't change any of them, because ServiceNow does use the checksums and to make sure that it's getting accurate information. Not just that, but it's also for the security of your instance too, because you don't want something changed and then by hand outside of ServiceNow, and then come in and your app's broken. So you want to kind of control the secure. It's a little bit on the security side as well, but yeah, these changes are tracked with, like I said, checksums. So you don't want to change these outside of ServiceNow.
It says right there in bold, do not edit the file. Zoom way in. Do not edit the files.
There you go.
There.
That's super important. And there's really no need to do that, because you got Studio, right? You got a great IDE to make these changes, and you can push them back to the repo, and it'll handle those changes just fine.
If you are using a personal developer instance from developer.servicenow.com, then you will more than likely want to be familiar with using source control, because your instance is free and it's there for a limited time. So if you don't use it, say, for 10 days, it goes away. Well, we don't want you to lose all your work. So this makes a good free external storage repository too. So if you fire up your new instance, you just import your stuff right back from GitHub. It's a nice backup policy. And there's things on my personal developer instance that I don't want to back up. So if it blows up and dies and goes away, or I Z-boot it or something, I don't need to worry about it. I've got saved what I want to save.
Yes. And, I've been using Git for script, command line scripts for a long time. And I know other people have, but it's fantastic. I love it. And to see an implementation in ServiceNow using Git, I think it's fantastic. So I would highly recommend it so you never lose your work. Now let's go back into Studio. There's a couple more things I want to show here before I wrap up the demo. Now, under File, we had mentioned earlier about managing developers, right? Okay, I'm going to add a developer. I think I actually forgot to remove Chuck, but let's add somebody else. There's Chuck right there. If you go into developers, you can add groups here, so you can give them all access to do things, or you can add individual people. So let's say, is Abel Tudor on here? Oh, Abel, he's so awesome. So let's pull up Abel, and you can see there's all the options that we can use, or that we can give him. Allow scripting. He can have access to maybe reporting and only Flow Designer, or you can do it all. Maybe he can do it all. As Abel, he can do it all. So all you do is you choose that, or you can pick a group and do the same kind of thing here and give them all access to what they need. And when you're done, you just hit save. And now I got 2 developers on here, Chuck and his successor, Abel.
Oh, thanks. I guess I'm moving on.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to touch on is publishing an app. So when we publish an app, you can publish it to an application repository and make it available to your other instances, maybe in your setup, or you can publish it to the ServiceNow store. I haven't done this myself. Have you done this, Chuck?
To the store, I've done the repo. We demonstrated that in December, but I don't have permission to publish anything to the store because I'm not a store partner. You need to be in the technical partner program to do that.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And you can see it comes down. It gives you the same information, but you have credentials to do that. And there's an approval process and all that work. So anyway, that's pretty much it. When you hit submit, submits the application and makes it available to the rest of your instance. So there you go. There's our demo of Studio. Is there any good questions?
There's no more?
Was there something else? Oh, were you going to edit one of the UI actions?
You want to show the concurrent editing?
Yes, let's do that. So,
what your instance name was. Was this your employee instance?
No, TechNow demo.
Oh, yeah. I have access to that. Yes, we want to show concurrent editing. While we're doing that, while I'm logging in and talking at the same time, I believe it was Ramesh jumped in and said, hey, you know what? That field is mandatory after the first commit. So it's optional on the first one, so the initial commit, but every other one is mandatory. Oh, cool.
That's a good point, because you don't, of course, I'm my own little Git repos. I'm guilty of not putting a comment in there of the changes I made. But it is good practice to do that, so you can know what you changed. Say I fixed, a bug in so and so. Just to give yourself a clue of what you're done, what's happening, or other developers for that matter. So
right.
Yes, make your comments.
Which UI action were we playing with?
Go to the complete exercise UI action.
Exercise UI action. Okay, I am opening that up, and in a second or two, you should see that I am there.
Chuck.
Look at that. Yep. It says CT is there, and I see a KS on this end for Kreg Steppe. So we know that someone's looking at this. Right? And if I were to add a comment and save, watch Craig's screen.
Yeah. So there's a comment right there. You see it pop in, and of course you see the indicator that the form has had changes. And Chuck changed this value. Oh, man, he does this all the time. And if you look over in the activity stream for this form, you'll see, if you need a clue what's been going on, you can also see it in there as well. So it's great. This is fantastic for working with other people.
It is.
And of course, I'm going to delete his comment. No, I'm just kidding.
Did you talk about delegated development?
No.
I think you missed it. Go back
to the file. Did I miss that?
Manage developers.
Yes, I did.
Quickly about this. They said, how do I work with the citizen developers in my organization? This was in the Q&A, so I'm jumping ahead a little bit. How do I work with those citizen developers without having to nitpick about every little thing? This is the way you do it. You don't have to give them admin access because you're giving away the keys of the castle, and you could wind up with, messed up credentials on an integration somewhere. You don't want that. You want to be able to prescriptively grant people and or groups bits and pieces of that application, not system-wide.
Right. That's what I was talking about with Able Tutor. I was showing where I could give him certain access. And
curiously answering questions and answers.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
So Able Tutor has full access, so you better watch out.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it into my demo. You can see, like I said, the changes. Studio is great. It brings everything together. Nice IDE. I've done the Wild West development in the past, and this is a welcome change. I know we've had Studio for a while, but it's only gotten better over time. And I certainly implore you to give it a shot instead of just editing all your scripts by hand and having a million Chrome tabs open. When it's all encapsulated right here, you can see literally your scope right here in Studio for your application. Do we have any more questions?
Yes. The first question is, can you use Studio in the global scope?
You can.
Okay. How do you do that?
But you can, but I don't think you don't want to necessarily do that unless you have to, right?
There is a feature that allows you to create an application in the global scope. You can also use Studio in the global scope. I need to get details on that. We should probably do that on a follow-up demo of how you do that. I saw it, but I haven't used it yet. I know it's there, and you have to literally claim files for you go and create a scope, and then you say, I want this application for this file, business rule, script include, UI action. Maybe it's the global new button on the task table or something. You want to be able to take that and claim it for that scope. And that way, nobody else is editing that thing. If they go to try and edit it somewhere, it says, hey, this belongs to so-and-so's application. You can't touch it unless they release it and you claim it. So it's sort of this passing or tagging it as mine sort of thing. And I want to show you that, but I don't know all the details at this point. So I will follow up and get back with that. Maybe we'll do a short video in the TechNow channel or something. So
I know it's possible, but I really try to work in my own scope. It kind of keeps everything, encapsulated and separate, so you can make changes to your own thing. But rather than global,
Yep. Yeah, and the whole point of scoped applications was for application-to-application protection.
Oh,
now we recognize that a lot of our out-of-box applications, incident, problem, change, all the most of the ITSM ones are global applications, and they're not going to roll over and change in Orlando when it comes out next month. So,
we also keep in mind that if you're editing stuff that's global, you could bring yourself into a situation where you may have a little trouble when you do upgrades. So you want to try and keep everything in your own local scope.
So does ServiceNow have its source control system where you can store application files? I think we answered that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we use Git-based technology as a third party. We don't have anything on board to do the source control. We thought about it way back in Helsinki when we introduced source control. We thought about doing this in-house, but there frankly are advantages to doing the third-party integration, as we'll begin to explore in the upcoming releases, that offer us some flexibility to that. And frankly, they're really robust anyway. So rather than reinventing the wheel, we said, hey, we can use their APIs to integrate this. So it's Git-based, which is GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. I think there may be a few more out there, but if you've got
itself, the Linux kernel is developed with Git. I mean, it's all been sorted. So yeah, this is a way to go.
Let's see, what else did we have? We had Dana Miller says you should point out the build a Need-It application in the developer training. This is a step-by-step guide to create an application, and it's very good. There you go. Oh, we mentioned it. So thank you very much for that. If you go to developer.servicenow.com, under the training section, you will see there is a step-by-step. It's called Need-It, Needit, like I want it, I need it, that kind of thing.
Okay. All right.
And you can build that out, and it will walk you through the steps of building an application, and it will include Studio. So a lot of what you've seen here today will be there.
Well, let's put a link to that in the show notes for this episode.
Excellent. I will do that. Let's see. If you give admin role to an app, does that give people using that app admin for the entire ServiceNow system or just the app scope?
No, they need, if I know I chose admin earlier, but if they have admin, then they can have access to your app, because that's a role that they need to access it. Not necessarily the other way around. Not if they, I mean, really, I should have made a new role, and then people get that role. But admin, of course, will be able to see it. Other people without admin would not be able to see my app or use it.
Okay, so when you were talking about Able Tutor and you said I gave him full access, you were giving full access to that app, not to the full system. There's a difference.
Well, I gave him access to access it in Studio. He may not have access to see it in the nav bar.
Well, still see the app. Good point. You could be a developer, but not a user. So there's the roles that the application uses for things like ACLs and menu options and whatnot. Those are going to be whatever your scope name is, X_SNC_fitness. And then you'll have a role, user, admin, approver, that kind of thing.
Yes.
That's what users of the system need to interact with your application. The developers, on the other hand. So Kreg, if you go back into delegated development, and I think you granted Able a role, correct? And hit save? So
no, I did not give him a role. I just gave him access to permissions for Able Tutor. He can file access. He can access the security, the deployment. Well, I didn't give him access to deployment.
Options here. Now go to Able Tutor's profile under sysuser.list. Go back to the regular interface. I want to show you what's happened. By flipping these switches, you are granting them roles, but they are not roles to the entire system. This is where I want to show you exactly what's going on with the roles.
So there's here.
Notice how it says SN_DD. That's delegated development. It says for this application, for the fitness app, you are allowed to edit shell scripts, do ACLs, whatever. That's his developer access, not necessarily, in fact, it's not tied to the access to that application. So like you said, you could be a developer on an application, but not have access to the application. It'd be kind of silly. How would you test it?
Yeah. Right. You would have to give him the X_SNC, whatever role for that app, and then you can see it and interact with it.
So those SNDDs are the evidence that this person has delegated development. And doing a little decoding, you can see there's the application fitness app. There's the thing they can do in that fitness app. And it is narrowed down to specifically what are they allowed to do with that app. If Able wanted to work on, say, that really cool app you wrote, you'd have to go into really cool app and go into manage developers and give him roles to that too.
Yeah. So, and theoretically, once an app was done, you could remove him from that and he wouldn't have access to make any changes further, and maybe he moves on to another app.
Yes.
Or whatever. So, yeah.
Another question. Can you access code search outside of Studio? Not in this release, but it is coming very soon. I hate to be so cryptic, but this is being recorded and released before we officially release Orlando and the general availability. So I'm not allowed to say anything about Orlando, but if you do a little connecting of the dots, and I think Andrew Barnes may have shown something like this on Live Coding Happy Hour on Friday the 14th. So you could take a look there. We did do a little exploring around of some Orlando features because anyway, I'm not going to get into the technicals about that, but
stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned, kids.
I'm going to say not as of New York, coming soon.
Okay, there you go. All right. Any more questions or?
Not that we have time for, but if you didn't get your question answered, and thank you everybody who did answer or who did ask the questions. If we didn't get them answered, I apologize. It's not because we don't love you. We just ran out of time and there were a lot of questions. We will get those answered on the community after we post this message. I'm trying to get certain windows out of the way so I can get back to work here. We don't need the demo up there anymore. Thank you very much, Kreg. That was very informative. We certainly had a lot of territory to cover.
Yeah, I love Studio. I think it's great. I think it's a great addition to ServiceNow, and it only makes things a little quicker to get going. So, yep.
I live there.
So anyway, the takeaways. Speaking of takeaways, so the takeaways is plan and know your audience, where your data is coming from, and how you expect it all to work. Then you can use Studio to build your application and maintain all elements in one space in your scope. And of course, you can quickly deploy it to other instances, or like I said, an app repo, so you can keep track your changes. So there you go.
We did have you air quoted scope. We did have a comment that a scope is really just a container. That's how I.
Yeah. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, but when you think of containers, usually go to like Docker or something. But we'll move on.
Yeah.
Some resources. Don't forget, if you're watching this live on the resource panel, we do have our Orlando launch party, which is happening on March 19th. It's a link in that resource panel for our live webinar viewers. We've got a whole bunch of links in there to various things, including what you see on the screen here. But one that's not on the screen that is in the resource panel is to register for the March 19th launch. So keynote, overview of everything, the big stuff that's coming out at Orlando. And then we have these spotlights afterwards. So check those out, particularly the platform one, and we'll cover platform features that are new and cool that you might not have picked up in our January episode. Wink, wink. So you definitely want to stay tuned to this developer cool stuff if you want to get the early information and not have to wait 6-8 weeks to get it.
Right.
All the resources. We also had a question in the Q&A. Is there a link to the previous episodes? Yes. It's bit.ly/ServiceNow-TechNow. We also have that in the resource widget. If you're watching this live, we will have this link in the community. That brings you to the community. It's got all of our,
past episodes.
7 years, Kreg. Long running. Long run.
I'm just kidding.
That's more than 50% of the podcasts in the world. Yeah. And moving right along. So remember, your Q&A will be posted back to this episode when we get there. Thank you very much for joining us. You can get in touch with us in any of these methods that you see on the screen via email. YouTube comments are always encouraged. Twitter, or mail us directly. We appreciate your feedback. And with that, you can always watch any of the previous ones on the webinar. Until next time, I'm Chuck Tomasi, and you are?
I'm Kreg Steppe. Kreg Steppe.
Now, really look forward to seeing you at Knowledge in, I think it's about 72 days from now. So,